2020 Chicago Bears are an absolute mess, okay? Another national TV embarrassment. They have lost 5 straight. And this season pretty much seems like a waste. Now, I know there's still games left in the season, but for the most part, do you really expect this team to turn it around from what we've seen? Yeah, I don't. So, again, I'm tired of talking about what's wrong with this team, as I'm sure you are. And now I actually want to talk about how to fix this team and how to address the problems with the Chicago Bears. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. You guys see the whiteboard behind me. It is time for some educational commentary. So we're going to go ahead and go to the whiteboard. And I'm going to talk about how I think the Bears should go about fixing this team. Get back to some sort of a relevant roster that isn't in an absolute mess, especially on the offensive side of things. So I'm going to be talking about that and more. But before I do, if you're new to the channel, make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you have not done so. Guys, I do talk a lot of Chicago Bears on this channel, and you don't want to miss out. All right? Make sure to go ahead and do that. And make sure that you are also following me on my social media platforms. You guys want to reach out to me, ask me questions, DM me, etc. That's the place to be. Links down below and on the screen, as always. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right, so here we go. How to fix the Chicago Bears, folks. So enough about just talking about, the problems on this team, what's wrong with this team. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I'm sure you're tired of it, as am I. Let's talk about actual solutions. I'm a solutions type of guy. I have a solution mindset. When somebody gives me a problem, I'm thinking about the solution, right? So let's do the same thing here. All right, so how do you fix this team? Well, before we even think about fixing the team, you have to think about a plan, right? You have to think about an approach. Before you fix something, you have to have a plan, all right? Or nothing will fall into place. Well, the plan essentially is going to be one of two things, right? It's either you're going to decide to rebuild or you're going to decide to retool, all right? So, again, you got to decide that. So, you got two options. You can rebuild, or you can retool. Now, here's the difference. If you are going to rebuild, that means you are essentially admitting you need to scrap everything and start from scratch, right? That means everything must go and you have to start from scratch, and this could take years. And that's key, because you can't say you're going to rebuild and then 2 years down the line say, oh, you know what, this is taking too long. I don't want to do a rebuild anymore. No, you have to stick with it. Now, rebuild means more of a chance at long-term success. All right, nothing's guaranteed, even in both plans, right? You have to get certain things right. But rebuilding means you have a better chance at long-term success, because you are, again, scrapping everything and getting a foundation in place and then adding pieces to it. Retooling is essentially saying, I've got some things that are good and I've got some things that are bad. Let me try and fix the bad and combine it, and hopefully we got something that'll work. Now, better short-term approach, so long-term, you might not be better off, but it will give you a chance at the short term. So that's essentially the way to go. So the Bears have to decide whether they want to rebuild or whether they want to retool. So that's the first thing. So taking a look at the Bears roster, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of, let's say, an owner, all right, and I say, okay, what do I have on this roster that's worth keeping, that does good things, right? Well, there's some players on the offensive side of football we know, like young guys like Darnell Mooney, but even Allen Robinson, Cole Kmet hasn't really played a lot. Okay, David Montgomery, maybe, behind a better offensive line, he would be a solid running back. James Daniels, when he wasn't hurt, he's a good offensive lineman. Cody Whitehair, he's worth keeping. So there's pieces on the offensive side of the football, right? Collectively, we know the offense is trash. Individual pieces. But then we take a look at the defense and we say, okay, the defense is elite. We know that, right? This is a defense that, for the most part, has been elite all season long, except against the Packers. But let's give the defense a credit. This is a defense you can win a Super Bowl with. Then what else? I guess maybe you have a kicker now. Carlos Santos has looked good. But that's about it. A couple of pieces on offense. Defense is good. And then maybe a kicker. Well, then I'm saying, all right, if you want to rebuild, that means you got to scrap everything. All right, and that's the thing. People want to always say, okay, let's just tear everything down. Let's rebuild everything. Well, that means giving up on this defense too. That means you are getting rid of this elite defense, trading the veteran players like Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack, guys like that. So, again, be mindful of that. You can't rebuild and keep certain parts. You scrap everything. So, when I take a look at the Bears roster, I think it makes more sense to do a retool than a rebuild. And here's why. The NFL is different than the NBA. All right? The NBA, you need to rebuild. It's hard to retool because it's dominated so much by the fact that if you have a superstar or superstars, right? If a team has LeBron James, that's the team that's probably going to win every other year, etc. Or Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard. You get my point. The NFL is different because of the fact that, again, it's not a 7-game series. It's a 1-game playoff. And we've seen crazy things happen in the NFL. And you can turn your season around quickly. And you can also turn, a team around quickly. Meaning, how many times have we seen a team go from last in the division to first, right? There's a new winner of the division every year in the NFC East. So in the NFL, turnaround times are a lot quicker than, let's say, in the NBA, because the NBA is so much driven by 1 or 2 players, and also the fact that you have series. And so in most series, majority of the time, the better team is going to win. Well, in the NFL, it's 1 game, right? Any given Sunday, that's why they say that. And so it's quicker to turn your team around in the NFL. That's why I would say, I think it makes more sense to retool. Now, what would a retool entail? Let's talk about that. Okay, so now that we know that it would probably make more sense for the Bears to retool, let's talk about what that would entail. All right, so what do we need on this roster? Right, what do we say we need? Well, we need a GM. We need a coach. We need a quarterback. And we need an offensive line. Right? So that just means it's need for all these. Let's start with quarterback. Quarterback and offensive line first. Everybody wants the Bears to draft a quarterback, right? We're talking about Kyle Trask, Zach Wilson, all these quarterbacks that the Bears could potentially draft. I would say one thing. If you are trying to retool, drafting a quarterback, while I agree with, and the Bears should absolutely draft a quarterback, with this defense, if you're keeping it, it probably makes more sense to acquire a quarterback through other means. So that would be free agency or trade. Now, I know I'm going to get, Bears fans up in arms here. Faiz, are you saying don't draft a quarterback? No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. Absolutely draft a quarterback. But I am saying this. If you are trying to retool, just know that it is going to be insanely difficult to win right away with a rookie quarterback. All right? Everyone loves to talk about Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes sat his first year. So he really didn't start till his second year. And even still, that's Patrick freaking Mahomes. Like, that's not normal. And we shouldn't compare every young quarterback to what Patrick Mahomes did in just his second year. And he didn't win a Super Bowl until his third year, I believe, yes. So, even Patrick Mahomes, it took 3 years, 1 year sitting and 2 years playing, to win a Super Bowl. And so, for the Bears, if you do draft a quarterback, which I'm okay with, you might want to sit him, because we're not going to get a first round. We're not going to get a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields, right? Or like a top 5 quarterback pick. So you sit him. And if you're sitting him, that means you have someone starting ahead of him. So this is where you have to get creative, right? And find a quarterback through free agency or trade. Because here's the thing, folks. Young players don't win much in this league. Young quarterbacks don't win much in this league, right? We know that. This is the one thing where I will say it's similar to the NBA. Young players don't win anything, all right? You have to have veterans in place. And so, again, maybe you get creative here. Maybe the Lions, are looking to rebuild, and they want to move on from Matt Stafford now that they've fired their head coach, Matt Patricia, and their general manager, Bob Quinn. Maybe Matt Stafford's available. Look at what it takes to get him. We know that Dak Prescott could be a free agent next year. What about Sam Darnold? I know he's younger than both of these guys, but at least he's been in the league for, a few years now, and maybe a change of scenery will do him good, and you can have him from the Jets, who look like they're going to get the rights to draft Trevor Lawrence. So there is a way to get creative and get quarterbacks out there, and all three of these guys would most likely, they would be upgrades over the Bears' current quarterback situation. Maybe not Sam Darnold, but we'll see about that. But the point being is, there is a way to get creative and get a quarterback out there, right? Whether that's free agency or trade. That's why I didn't put draft here. I still want the Bears to draft a quarterback. Don't get that mistaken. But he might have to sit behind a guy, a veteran, for a year or two. Offensive line. This is where you're drafting. Absolutely. I mean, no doubt about it. I want the Bears to use the majority of their draft picks on the offensive line. This has been a position Ryan Pace has neglected pretty much his entire regime here as the general manager. No more. It is time to start addressing the offensive line. Draft. All right? Now, speaking of Ryan Pace, we need a new general manager and coach. We've already talked about it. It's time for them to go. Ryan Pace has had cracks at fixing the quarterback position. He hasn't. Matt Nagy has had multiple chances to fix this offense. He hasn't. Sorry, it's time to go. It's a performance business. It is what it is. I like them. They're nice guys, but so is Mitchell Trubisky, and he's not a good quarterback. General manager and coach. Here's what I'm looking for. Obviously, we can't do draft and free agency. That's not where you find them. But the important thing is I need the trait that we haven't had in a while. Experience. That's it. I want guys in this role that have done this. I'm going to use the Bulls as an example here. The Bulls repeatedly would keep hiring coaches that had no prior experience, right? Oh, it worked with Tom Thibodeau, so it must work with, every other coach that we hire that's a first-time coach. Oh, it didn't work with Fred Hoiberg? Oh, dang. Oh, it didn't work with Jim Boylan? Oh, dang. Yeah. They hired Billy Donovan. They got grown-ups in the front office. And now, look, the culture is changing. All right? I'm not saying, obviously, the Bulls have proven anything yet, but the regime with the new front office, they have gotten an experienced guy in there, and they got a guy who has had experience running a team in Arturas Karnisovas. So why can't it be the same thing with the Bears? Right? Get a guy in here that's a general manager who's had experience running front offices, not like Ryan Pace, who was a new GM, the youngest GM, I believe, when he was hired. No problem with a guy being young, just you need experience. And then a coach, man, Nagy, a first-time coach. What about getting a coach in here that has been a previous coach? So point being is I need this. I need experience here in both of these positions because we can't afford to take chances with guys that don't have experience anymore because we can't afford to wait. Okay, so once you've done this, right, addressed general manager, coach, quarterback, offensive line, then there's another step that needs to be done. But as of now, again, the Bears went the retool route. They've addressed these positions. Now, you might be saying, oh, there's other holes on the roster. Folks, we're only talking about the biggest ones here, right? Could we use a second receiver? Sure. Could we use better tight end? Sure. But for the most part, we know what matters most in the NFL. It's quarterback, it's offensive line, defense, etc. So once you do this, next you need to go ahead and make sure that whoever you end up hiring as coach, again, you want to let them run their system, but keep this in mind. There needs to be a scheme change, and there will, because it'll be a new coach. But what does this scheme change mean? It means this, okay? The play style has to be different, like I've been saying all year long, right? And I'll explain this right here. If you guys can read, the play style of the Titans, Browns, Rams. All right, I've said this all year long. Now, this did not work this year for a variety of reasons, but most notably because of also personnel as well. What do I mean by play style? Okay, so the way to win in this league, if you do not have an elite quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, or Aaron Rodgers, is you basically try to play mistake-free football, keep the ball out of the other team's hands, right? and you run the football, right? The Titans, Browns, and Rams do that to a T. The Titans are a running football team. Ryan Tannehill doesn't turn the football over. And that's how they are a Super Bowl contender. Now, some people might say they don't believe they're going to win the Super Bowl. Well, we're saying they're a contender. They're legitimate. Would you be really that surprised if the Titans won? Right? So, again, there's a little bit of a personnel change here in terms of the fact that they have Derrick Henry, who's one of the best running backs. So that's why I say the Bears don't have an offensive line, and they have David Montgomery, who's clearly not Derrick Henry. So it's hard to say, oh, run the football like the Titans when you don't have that. I understand it. But that's why I said this is why we need a scheme change and a play style, and then obviously get the players to acquire and run that scheme change, right? The Browns. Baker Mayfield turns the football over too much. They hate putting the game in his hands. They run it with Nick Chubb down your throat, and they run it with Kareem Hunt. Look at the Browns. The freaking Browns turn their entire culture and season around, and they don't even have a good quarterback. They're 7-3, 8-3, I forget. And that's only because of what? Because they got a guy in there that has experience. They got the personnel, the scheme change. They understood we need to run the football, keep it out of Baker Mayfield's hand. I'm telling you right now, if the Browns had even a decent quarterback, I don't think Baker Mayfield's even that good. If they had Matt Stafford, they're a Super Bowl contender. And they're still going to make the playoffs, but I'm just saying, like even a competent quarterback. And then the Rams, same thing. Sean McVay is so smart. He knows he does not want to win or lose games on the back of Jared Goff. They've already made a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. I know they lost, but they got there. And what do? They run the football, and they don't even have a Derrick Henry. So don't tell me it's only possible with the Derrick Henry when the Rams run the football with like 3 different running backs. So again, it's all about this scheme change, this play style, and running the football, depending on your defense and keeping the ball away from the other team. That is the only way you're going to win without an elite quarterback, folks. Not every team has Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson, and so you're going to have to get creative. And it's possible, right? The Broncos, they won with a washed-up Peyton Manning, right? The Ravens won with Joe Flacco. The Giants won 2 times with Eli Manning. Like, it is possible, all right? But, again, everybody wants to have the elite quarterback. Again, if you get the elite quarterback, you're set, right? That's the rebuild route. If you want to go that, cool. But then this defense, you might not get it. So everything needs to be put in perspective here, folks. All right? Elite quarterback would solve everything, but they don't grow on trees. So if that's not an option, the next best case is retooled, address all these positions, GM, coach, quarterback, offensive line, address them through these means, and then get a scheme change here, get a play style in here, and hopefully you can be like these 3 playoff teams, the Titans, Browns, and Rams. And that's how you go ahead and you fix the Chicago Bears. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you guys did, let me know. I'll try to make more videos like this, you guys, because again, I'm so tired of talking about the problems on this team. It's way past time to clean house. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of perspective on what I'm looking at in terms of the Bears. And obviously, let's see what happens here moving forward. But yeah, guys, look, I'm telling you, obviously everybody wants an elite quarterback. They don't grow on trees. If every team could have one, they would, but it's hard out here. So you got to figure it out. You got to find a way around it. That's how I believe the Bears can do it. So there you have it. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. As always, thanks for watching.